Hello, everybody. This is John Felt. Welcome to the NCGA Valent Ag Weather Outlook for April 10th, 2016. Now, last week I mentioned that the story, as I saw it, was going to be unusually cold weather, a frost or a freeze, and not so much precipitation except for some pesky snow, late winter weather over the Great Lakes. So when we look at the past 7-day precipitation, not just over the Corn Belt, but for the nation, it was a very quiet week as far as precipitation. But over the eastern Corn Belt, Great Lakes, there was some modest rain and even some snow. But overall, precipitation was below normal. The areas in yellow or red are indicating below normal precipitation, and you can see the vast majority of the region, fairly uneventful week as far as precipitation goes. Now, if you're in one area here in particular, parts of the Great Lakes, upper Wisconsin, parts of Michigan, as well as surrounding states, the northeast U.S., there was some significant snow. I'm sure we're really tired of it by this time of year. We just really haven't seen a sustained warming, and I'm looking for that. And I have some signs of that. I have some good news, but so far this spring, it's been slow to arrive, other than maybe a couple days here and there. Matter of fact, some of that snow is still on the ground here. Usually, like I mentioned last week, snow that arrives this time of year goes very quickly, melts very quickly. But the medium blue there is indicating some snow on the ground. The white is probably already melted. Now, last week was dominated by this dip in the jet stream. I was talking for weeks now about this period, a cold snap. We did have frost and even freezing temperatures, mainly over the upper Midwest and the eastern Corn Belt in the northeast U.S. This corresponds with that dip in the jet stream. Western U.S., quite mild, but we still have some of that lingering cold air. This is the polar source region. You can see in Canada some lingering cold air. And that's something I've been studying really closely. I think I've given you some insight into that as we went from the winter into the spring. Now, this week's going to be a transition week. You can see when we look at the average 5-day, you can see that upper trough in the jet stream, which really peaked this past week, is diminishing. We're getting even into a little bit of a jet stream a little bit further north than normal, and that's at Brown. But we're still going to start off with sort of a cold start over the Corn Belt early this week, but we're going to end up with much nicer and milder weather. So when I average those 5 days, this is that pattern. It's somewhat similar to last week, warm in the west, pushing into parts of the western Corn Belt, but still lingering cold in the east. So especially the eastern Corn Belt, areas that have some of that snow on the ground from Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, that's going to be really lingering some of that cold air through 5 days. Now, precipitation, we're going to have some thunderstorms roll through early this period. But for the most part, again, it looks like a fairly quiet week, except for some modest precipitation across the southern part of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, and then over the south central U.S. Now let's look out a little bit further through the April 15th through 20th period. And this is where I see that big change. It looks like that trough in the jet stream finally breaks down and it's replaced with a bowing north of the jet stream. So we're going to go with unusually cold weather that we saw this past week into early this week, and then we're going to go now into a much milder weather pattern over areas that have been unusually cold. Matter of fact, here's your 6 to 10 day, and if you're in Minnesota, parts of northern Iowa, Wisconsin, and Michigan, here's the good news I've been looking for. Looks like much milder temperatures as we get into the latter part of this week and into early next week as well. Let's look a little bit further ahead, 11th through 15th. That's bulge north of the jet stream does not continue in right now, at least in the 11 through 15 day period. But at the same time, it doesn't look like a real strong dip. So here's your pattern. If you're looking at the eastern Corn Belt in the Great Lakes, starting off in this cold pattern, then very abruptly going into a mild pattern for say a week, and then going back, I would say, to normal as we get into the latter part of April. You can see that here on temperatures. The 11 through 15 day, it warms up again in the western U.S. And side note, with these unusually mild temperatures in the west, I think we're going to be talking a little bit more about that D word, on drought due to the unusually warm temperatures. But in the 11 through 15 day over the Corn Belt, that's going to be pushing in the west. Now, you might remember I've been putting out a number of information about some emerging drought in this region here in North Dakota. And it looks to me that the temperatures are going to support that, but there might be some precipitation in that area that would sort of hold it into a status quo. Okay, that's temperature. Let's look at precipitation. This is week 1. Green is above normal precipitation, yellow below normal. So the core of the Corn Belt below normal precipitation this week. This would be really beneficial if we actually did work some of this moisture up to the north. It doesn't look like a real strong signal here. It's just light green, but there is the possibility of working some up to the north. But the majority of the Corn Belt right here below normal precipitation, except for that very narrow band of a couple inches with thunderstorms early this week. Here's week 2. I think this is relatively unremarkable. It's showing a quiet week over most of the Corn Belt. So really, I think over the next 2 weeks, the story is going to be more on temperature fluctuations with relatively quiet precipitation. Now, we're in spring, so this can change. We can get some thunderstorms in here. We're in severe weather season. But right now, from a large scale, I don't see anything all that big. Now, soil temperatures have been slow to warm due to this cold air, and as you'd expect, you can almost see that where that trough sort of has dropped down here. We're still looking at temperatures in the 40s over the parts of the central and eastern Corn Belt, so really nothing all that significant. And if we look at the forecast here, this is the forecast for later this week, and what you can see here is that we are pulling warmer temperatures well to the north this week, and that's corresponding with that warm air working in. So you can see here we've really pulled some mild soil temperatures. The green is the 50-degree temperature line, but it lags over the eastern Corn Belt, and that's because these first 5 days again are going to be on the cool side. I think when we get in the 6 to 10 day, this is going to push up too. So you're going to see some significant warming of soil temperatures, I believe, in the 6 to 10 day period. Finally. Okay, now let's talk about severe weather. We do have a chance of some severe weather early this week, both today and Monday, over these areas, especially in that darker shade of brown, Oklahoma, parts of Arkansas. For the most part, staying out of the Corn Belt. There could be some strong thunderstorms. So here's your summary. The coldest temperatures have passed. That's that cold spell with frost and freezing temperatures. That's still going to be a risk early this week over parts of the upper Midwest, but I think as we get into the 6 to 10 day period, it looks like much milder temperatures for another maybe week period. And overall, when I say unremarkable precipitation, I mean most likely averaging below normal, drying soils, but that doesn't mean we won't have some thunderstorms here and there, and even some more modest rain here and there. So that's this week's briefing. I hope that helps you in your planning activities, and I will be updating you throughout the week.